I was holding her hand when she cried and told me she was dying. My older sister, Brielle, always had a way of taking up all the oxygen in the room, but that day she looked so small, so fragile. She said the doctors gave her a year, maybe less. Stage 4 lymphoma. Her voice cracked as she asked me to keep it a secret from the rest of the family. She couldn't handle the pity. I didn't ask for proof. I didn't need to. She was my sister. So I paid her rent. I covered her credit cards. I sold my engagement ring and drained my savings. She said the treatments were experimental and not covered by insurance. I believed her. God, I wanted to believe her. I spent my nights crying in the dark, praying she'd beat it, that she'd live. Meanwhile, she sent photos of the fourth bags, hospital beds, and blurry selfies in gowns. Turns out, Google Images is a hell of a resource for the creatively vile. I didn't see the cracks until much later. She always had an excuse for why I couldn't come visit her at the hospital. COVID restrictions, new policies, too tired from chemo. I swallowed every excuse, like communion wine, bitter, but holy. Our mom, ever the narcissist, suddenly wanted to connect with Brielle again. That should have been my first red flag. Mom never wanted anything to do with us, unless she could benefit. But I was too busy saving my sister to notice the noose tightening around me. My credit tanked. I missed rent twice. My boyfriend of 4 years left, saying he couldn't compete with the ghost of someone else's tragedy. Then came Christmas Eve. I showed up at our mother's house with the last of the presents I could afford, only to be greeted with raised eyebrows and silence. The kind of silence that tastes like metal. Mom opened the door halfway, arms crossed. "We thought you weren't coming," she said flatly. Brielle appeared behind her, flushed and glowing, not pale and sickly. She was wearing a full face of makeup, sipping champagne. "I didn't want you to find out like this," she said. "But I'm in remission. It's a Christmas miracle." Everyone cheered. I stood there, clutching a wrapped candle and a tin of cookies I'd baked because I couldn't afford real gifts. They popped bottles. They took group photos without me. Brielle made a toast about fighting through darkness with the light of family. No one looked at me. Mom offered me leftovers in a Tupperware and asked if I could leave soon. "We don't have enough chairs." I sat in my car in the driveway, watching them laugh through the window, and something inside me finally broke. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just drove away and started planning. First thing I did was stop all the payments, the automatic transfers, the credit line I'd co-signed, everything. I changed my phone number, blocked everyone. Then I contacted a friend of mine, a tech-savvy coworker, who owed me a favor after I covered for his screw-up at work. "Can you find out where my sister's been? Like, really been?" It took less than a week. The photos were incredible. Brielle on a yacht in Capri. Brielle drinking wine at a cooking class in Tuscany. Brielle ziplining in Costa Rica with a hashtag YOLO, #WanderQueen, all time stamped within the same month she was supposedly in chemo. I scrolled through her posts, each one a knife. That BTCH had blocked me from her public socials but forgot her Pinterest. Amateur mistake. I compiled everything: screenshots, dates, captions. Then I found the GoFundMe $23,860 raised. I submitted a fraud report to the platform, then to the IRS, then to her bank. And finally, I emailed the folder to every family member who had clapped for her at Christmas. With one sentence, "Here's the miracle." Then I deleted the email and went to sleep for the first time in months. The fallout was nuclear. My cousin called in tears. My aunt left a voicemail sobbing. My mom? She sent a voice message that started with, "You spiteful little snake," and ended with, "You'll die alone." But Brielle, she sent nothing. Her social media went dark. She vanished. And for once, I didn't chase after her. 3 weeks later, I got a certified letter from a law firm representing GoFundMe. They were pursuing criminal charges. I grinned so hard I thought my face might crack. When the investigator contacted me for a statement, I told him everything. I even forwarded Brielle's Venmo records, which she idiotically left public. Spa treatments, designer clothes, hotel upgrades, all labeled things like chemo recovery or medical retreat. The best part? She'd listed our mother as a co-beneficiary. They both got indicted, publicly. I kept the news articles. I keep them in a folder labeled proof. A month ago, Brielle reached out through a new number. She said she wanted to talk, said she was sorry, said she was in therapy now. I didn't respond. I just blocked her. They called me selfish for leaving, said I turned my back on family. But I finally feel like I can breathe, and that's enough. The silence after the storm didn't last long. At first, I thought maybe they were embarrassed. Maybe the weight of what they did had finally settled in. Maybe they were ashamed, or at least smart enough to leave me alone. But shame has never been in short supply with my family. It just never belongs to the people who deserve it. It started with a letter. Handwritten, cursive, so tight it looked like it was strangling itself. No return address, but I knew it was from Mom. The second I saw the overly formal way she spelled my name, she called me vindictive, said I'd twisted something beautiful into a public humiliation, that I'd ripped apart the family for attention, and Brielle deserved a second chance. Not one word of accountability. Not a single question about how I was doing. It was signed, "With love, Mom." I didn't respond. Not to that letter. Not to the Facebook friend requests from long-lost cousins. Not to the text messages from Brielle's old friends asking if I'd really turned her in. As if she was the victim. As if I'd set her up. Then came the knock on my apartment door. It was a Tuesday morning. I'd just gotten out of the shower. My lease was up in 2 months, and I was already planning to move somewhere quiet, somewhere they wouldn't find me. I opened the door a crack. Brielle was standing there. No makeup, no champagne, just shadows under her eyes and a trembling lip she used to weaponize in high school whenever she wanted to get out of trouble. "Please," she whispered, "just hear me out." My first instinct was to slam the door. But curiosity, that dangerous, pathetic thing that still lived in my chest, overruled common sense. "I let her in," she cried. Big, ugly sobs that shook her shoulders. She fell onto my couch like she hadn't planned anything, like her body just gave up halfway through pretending to be human. I didn't say a word. "I panicked," she said. "I was drowning in debt, and no one else would help. I just needed a little bit. I didn't think it would get this far." I stayed silent. She kept going. "It got easier, lying to people, saying I was sick. Everyone treated me so gently. I didn't have to try anymore. I didn't even know how to stop. I asked her the only question that mattered. Why me?" She looked up with tear-glossed eyes and answered like it was obvious. "Because you'd never say no." She was right. For so long, I'd bent until I broke. I made myself small to keep the peace. I gave until there was nothing left of me. And the moment I stopped, they declared war. Brielle begged me to talk to GoFundMe, to the DA, to fix it. She said she'd pay me back, swear to God. Said if I dropped the case, the family might forgive me. I laughed so hard I nearly blacked out. Then I told her to get the hell out of my apartment. 2 days later, my landlord called. He sounded confused. Said he got a tip that I was subletting illegally, that someone had filed a complaint about loud parties and drug use. He apologized but said the company was moving to evict me anyway. I hadn't had a guest in weeks. I didn't even drink. The next week, HR at my job called me in for a routine audit. Someone had emailed screenshots of old social media posts, taken wildly out of context, claiming I'd said offensive things about clients. Luckily, our tech guy, the same one who'd helped me find Brielle's travel logs, recognized the formatting. Fake screenshots. Sloppy Photoshop. They didn't work, but the message was clear. My family wasn't going to take the truth lying down. I started locking my phone with multi-factor authentication. I removed my name from every public directory I could think of. When that didn't work, I got a PO box 2 towns over. Then one day, I came home to find my front door slightly open. Nothing was missing, nothing was broken, but my laptop was on, and the folder marked proof was gone. I had backups, of course, encrypted, offsite. But still, I stood there in the hallway, heartbeat like a war drum, realizing that the people who were supposed to love me would rather destroy me than own what they did. That night, I didn't sleep. I paced. I thought about running again, changing my name, leaving the state. But the more I sat with it, the clearer it became. I didn't need to disappear. They did. So I dug deeper. I searched court records, real estate documents, public tax filings. I started connecting dots I'd never bothered to trace before. Turns out, Mom had put several assets in Brielle's name to dodge an old lawsuit. One of those assets? The house they were living in. It wasn't theirs. It was in a trust one. Mom didn't legally control, and the trustee? A distant cousin named Elise, the black sheep of the family. The one Mom had cut off a decade ago over a will dispute. I tracked Elise down. She was living in Oregon, teaching art and drinking herbal tea with a dog named Moose. I emailed her the documents and asked if she had any idea her name was on a trust with $600 worth of property in it. She did not. The next morning, she called me. And for the first time in years, someone in my family said the words I didn't know I'd been dying to hear. I believe you. She wasn't just angry, she was furious. Turns out, she'd been pushed out of the family over money she never knew she had a claim to. Together, we made a plan. Not revenge. Not exactly. Just justice with a little dramatic flair. Elise didn't ask me why I was doing this. She didn't need to. She'd seen the photos, the fraud, the fundraiser. She'd read the texts my mother sent after the GoFundMe indictment. And she'd lived through her own exile years earlier, cut out of the family like a diseased limb for daring to challenge a will. Your mom's mistake was thinking I'd never come back for what's mine, she said on our second call, the words calm, but taut with electricity. But your sister's mistake was hurting someone smarter than her. I'll admit, it felt good to hear that, like a warm hand on a frozen spine. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was yelling into a hurricane. I felt heard, and more than that, I felt dangerous. Elise and I worked fast. She hired a real estate attorney in California, someone who specialized in trust disputes. Within a week, a formal audit was opened on the property, the same house my mother had lived in for over a decade, a house she always claimed belonged to the family, a house she'd secretly tried to list for sale twice before, under a shell LLC tied to Brielle's name. She wasn't just a narcissist, she was a criminal with terrible bookkeeping. While Elise's lawyer filed injunctions and froze the trust assets, I played a quieter role. I started gathering receipts. Not literal ones, those I already had, but the kind that scream in text messages, whispered voicemails, emails you're not supposed to see. I pulled every digital trace I could recover. Brielle's travel itineraries, the GoFundMe withdrawals, Venmo transactions with idiotic captions like Paris prep and chemo detox. But what really set fire to the whole thing was the phone backup. My old laptop, the one someone had clearly accessed, still had an auto-sync backup from a year ago. And within that, a gold mine. Brielle had used my phone once on vacation when hers was dead, just for a day. But during that time, it had synced part of her iCloud account to my drive. Photos, notes, voice memos, and one memo stood out. Emergency story list. It was a script. Literally, a script of excuses she'd use if someone questioned her treatment schedule. Things like, my clinic doesn't allow visitors, even family. The meds make me forgetful, so I might say weird things. If I miss a treatment, I'll say it was moved last minute. It was so detailed I almost admired it, until the bile rose in my throat. She'd planned it all, down to how to fake being too weak to walk. She'd even scheduled random hair loss days so she could wear wigs. I wanted to scream, to drive to her place and throw it all at her face. But I didn't. Because revenge, real revenge, doesn't scream. It whispers. The lawyer Elise hired found another interesting detail buried in county archives. The trust had a clause. If the trustee, Elise, proved that any beneficiary had used the property for illegal activity or fraud, she could repossess it immediately. My sister and mother were about to learn what it felt like to be evicted, legally. In the meantime, they kept trying to bait me back in. I started getting anonymous messages on Instagram, things like family is forever, and blood is thicker than betrayal. I knew it was Brielle. Her writing style was about as subtle as a brick to the face. Then came the fake accounts, multiple ones, that began messaging my coworkers, saying I was mentally unstable, that I'd attacked my sister with lies, that I had a history of fabricating trauma. I knew exactly who it was. There was a phrase Brielle always used when she wanted to sound smart, emotionally erratic. One of the fake messages used that exact phrase. Unfortunately for her, one of those coworkers was dating a cybersecurity analyst. We traced the IP, logged the account activity, got proof, and I filed a harassment report with the police, attaching everything. 2 weeks later, Brielle's internet was cut off during an active investigation. She posted from a Starbucks, claiming she was being stalked by a jealous ex. No names. But we all knew. Around the same time, Elise's lawyer sent a formal demand for the property keys, citing the fraud clause. Mom refused. Of course she did. Claimed we were attacking a cancer survivor and a grieving mother. But the trust clause wasn't a request. It was a legal termination. They had 30 days to vacate. That's when the tone of everything changed. The messages stopped. The fake accounts went quiet. For 2 weeks, it was nothing but radio silence. Then I got a letter in the mail. It wasn't handwritten this time. It was typed. Formal, cold. It was from Brielle's attorney. She was filing a civil suit against me for emotional defamation, financial damages, and loss of future income due to character assassination. I read it 3 times. Then I laughed so hard I dropped the letter. She actually thought this was chess, but she was playing checkers with someone who built the board. I scanned the letter, forwarded it to Elise's lawyer, and added a simple note. Want to handle this, or should I? He replied with a smiley face and the word, handled. 2 days later, Brielle's attorney dropped the case. Apparently, once they saw the voice memo, the Venmo records, and the GoFundMe audit, they realized they were representing a fraudster mid-collapse. The final blow came quietly, just as I hoped. Elise served them the eviction in person, with a sheriff, on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, while neighbors watched from behind blinds. She told me later that my mom wore a bathrobe and smeared lipstick and said, "This isn't over." Elise smiled and said, "Oh, honey, it's been over for years." They left the house in garbage bags and plastic bins. Brielle posted one last cryptic TikTok, a shaky video of her crying in the passenger seat of a car with the caption, "Everything's falling apart." The comments were brutal. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. Sometimes silence is the loudest revenge. They didn't go quietly. Of course they didn't. Mom cried to anyone who would listen, claimed elder abuse. Said Elise stole her home in a family coup. She called it a betrayal worse than death. She posted on her Facebook like it was a eulogy, tagging extended family members and quoting Bible verses about honoring thy mother. I watched it unfold from my couch, wine in hand. Every time someone commented in sympathy, Elise calmly replied with legal links and public records. No rage, no drama, just receipts. Brielle, meanwhile, tried the influencer route. She posted selfies in cheap Airbnbs, pretending she was just taking a break from toxic energy. Her captions got more unhinged with each post. Real queens bounce back family is who you choose. Not all cancers are in your body. She thought she was clever, but the real hit came weeks later, when GoFundMe finished their fraud investigation. They ruled that not only did she fabricate medical claims, but she also misused funds across state lines, triggering a federal referral. The moment that email hit her inbox, she vanished from social media entirely. Her attorney, a new one, clearly cheaper, tried to negotiate a settlement. He asked if I'd consider restorative mediation, said she was willing to return a portion of the funds if we dropped our statements and closed the case. I didn't even answer. Elise's lawyer responded with a full breakdown of the restitution order, the criminal filings in progress, and a polite reminder that lying to a crowdfunding platform was considered wire fraud. We never heard from him again. Meanwhile, my mother moved into a dingy one-bedroom rental in a retirement complex 3 towns away. She told people she was downsizing by choice, said she needed less space and more peace. I guess that's one way to spin being legally ejected from your stolen home. But the moment that solidified everything, the one that stayed with me, wasn't legal or public. It was private. One night, about a month after the eviction, I got another knock at my door. This time, I looked through the peephole and saw a hunched figure in an oversized coat. "Mom!" I didn't open it. She stood there for a while, shifting from foot to foot, like she expected me to cave, like I always used to. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was thin, shaky. "I raised you better than this." I didn't respond, not even a breath. You were supposed to be the good one. Still nothing. I'm still your mother." I leaned close to the door and whispered just loud enough to be heard, "No, you're not." And then I turned off the porch light. I thought I might cry after, or shake. But instead, I made tea and played music and felt calm. For the first time in years, the storm wasn't inside me. The fallout didn't stop there. With Brielle's accounts frozen and her digital persona shattered, all the brands she had quietly partnered with, the shady weight loss tea companies, the MLM skincare deals, cut her loose. Some issued public statements. One tagged her name in a press release titled, "We do not support fraud." Even the people who once saw her as the brave warrior unfollowed. You can only lie so long before the applause turns to stones. One night, Elise and I met in person for the first time. We had dinner at a small place near the coast, a halfway point between our cities. She brought Moose, her enormous dog, who instantly tried to crawl into my lap. We talked for hours about family, about trauma, about what it feels like to be the designated scapegoat, the silent support system, the one who never gets picked until they're needed to hold everything together. "You know what pisses me off the most?" Elise said, pouring more wine. "They never even tried to hide it. They just assumed we'd stay quiet forever. They only ever saw what they could take," I said. "Never who we were. We toasted to that." A few days later, I got a package. No return label, but I knew the handwriting. It was from Brielle. Inside, a stack of crumpled photos of us as kids, a charm bracelet I thought I'd lost, and a letter. I almost threw it away unopened, but I didn't. The letter was long, rambling, half apology, half justification. She said therapy had opened her eyes, that she finally saw the damage, that maybe, just maybe, she was ready to take responsibility. She ended it with a line that almost made me laugh. "If we can't be sisters again, can we at least not be enemies?" I stared at the page for a long time. Then I folded it back up, slipped it into the envelope, and tossed the whole thing into the shredder. Not out of anger, out of finality, because I wasn't her enemy. I was her consequence. That distinction matters more than people realize. They expect revenge to be this fiery, dramatic thing, a screaming match, a slap, a door slammed so hard it echoes for years. But real revenge? It's the sound of silence after chaos, the peace of a clean apartment, a number no longer saved, a life rebuilt with no room for rot. I moved to a new city 2 months later, got a better job, found a therapist who doesn't flinch when I talk about manipulation. I adopted a cat, started sleeping through the night, and found a book club full of women who know exactly what it means to be the strong one until it almost kills you. Brielle and Mom haven't reached out again. Maybe they finally got the message. Or maybe they're just waiting for my guard to slip. But either way, it doesn't matter, because I'm not that girl anymore. The one who gave until it hurt. The one who bled for people who'd let her drown just to stay afloat a little longer. The one who believed family was a shield instead of a sword. That girl is gone. What's left is quieter, stronger, sharper. The kind of woman who keeps receipts. The kind of woman who knows peace is the sharpest blade of all. You'd think when the smoke clears, you'd feel triumphant, victorious, like all the pain was worth it. But that's the thing they don't tell you about surviving people like Brielle and my mother. There's no parade, no slow motion walk into the sunset, just space and silence. And all the things you finally have time to feel now that you're not holding back a dam. The peace came slowly, like rain after a drought, gentle at first, then all-consuming. I moved into a townhouse with no history, neutral walls, a quiet neighborhood, and no one who knew my name. I filled it with plants, real ones I remembered to water. I bought new bed sheets that didn't remind me of sleeping on my sister's couch while she rested from chemo. I threw away every candle I'd ever bought her, and I started over. I got a new job in a nonprofit that advocates for survivors of family abuse. The emotional kind. The covert, gaslit kind that leaves no bruises but somehow still breaks bones. My interviewers were 2 women in their 50s who both nodded when I said, "Sometimes being raised by someone doesn't mean they ever saw you." I started attending therapy every other week. I thought it would be about rage, about processing betrayal, but it wasn't. It was grief. Grieving the sister I thought I had, the mother I kept wishing would show up, the version of myself that bent until she snapped, just to keep the people around her comfortable. One session, my therapist said something that cracked something open inside me. I'd been talking about how guilty I still felt, how even after everything, part of me still wondered if I'd gone too far. She said, "You didn't go too far, you just finally stopped going too quietly." That line stayed with me. It changed me. I stopped apologizing in my emails. I stopped over-explaining my boundaries. I stopped taking responsibility for the feelings of people who wouldn't even blink if they shattered mine. I wasn't healed overnight, but I was healing. And then, months later, I got the message. It was from a number I didn't recognize. Just one line, "Hey, I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but Mom's not doing well. I thought you should know, Brielle." I stared at it for a long time, not because I didn't know what to do, but because I realized how far I'd come. There was a time that message would have unraveled me, a time when I would have dropped everything, driven across the state, sat in a hospital chair beside a woman who wouldn't have crossed the street to spit on me if I was on fire. But not anymore. I didn't respond. I didn't even let it take up space in my chest. I deleted it, blocked the number, took a deep breath, and made tea. She didn't follow up. I knew she wouldn't. Because for the first time in her life, I'd become unpredictable, untouchable, free. A few weeks later, I ran into an old neighbor from the town I left behind. She recognized me at a farmer's market and gasped like she'd seen a ghost. "Oh my God, we all heard what happened. I just want to say, I'm proud of you. I couldn't have done what you did." I smiled politely, unsure what to say. She leaned in and whispered, "We all knew something was off with your mom. We just didn't know how to say it, that's the thing. Most people see it, they just don't speak it, because naming that kind of darkness out loud makes it real. And once it's real, it's yours to deal with. But I'm not afraid of naming things anymore. Brielle was a fraud. My mother was a manipulator. And I was the collateral damage they didn't expect to lose. But I'm not damaged anymore. I'm scarred, sure, but scarred is just another word for proof you survived. Sometimes I catch myself thinking about forgiveness, wondering if I should send one last message just to say I've let it go. But I always stop myself, because I haven't forgiven them. Not because I'm bitter, but because forgiveness isn't a currency I owe anyone. Not when they've done nothing to earn it. Letting go isn't always about forgiving. Sometimes it's just about releasing the story from your spine so it doesn't bend you anymore. I stopped stalking their profiles. I stopped checking mutual friends' pages. I stopped letting them rent space in my mind. And slowly, so slowly, I started building a life that didn't revolve around surviving someone else's chaos. I met someone new, a quiet man who listens more than he speaks, who doesn't flinch when I set boundaries. We go on long walks. He asks me about my day and actually listens to the answer. He doesn't know the whole story. Not yet. But when he does, I think he'll understand. Some people grow up in families. Others grow up in war zones wearing holiday sweaters. And those of us who make it out, we carry the battlefield inside us for years. But eventually, if we're lucky, we learn to put the weapons down. To stop fighting for people who only ever wanted a punching bag. To breathe, to rest, to live. My story doesn't have a fairy tale ending. There's no reconciliation montage. No teary hug on a front porch. Just me. A woman in her 40s with a cat, a warm bed, a handful of loyal friends, and a sense of self no one can take again. They called me selfish for leaving, said I turned my back on family, but I finally feel like I can breathe, and that's enough. Story 2, I gave her $800 a week to support her ideal life. "You're just here for the free food, right?" she asked with a giggle on her birthday. Cake didn't keep me around. 13 voicemails, 3 messages, and one anxious tap on my door came 36 hours later. I was not anticipating a thank you. Not only did I not anticipate flowers, but I also did not anticipate that. I take it. "You're only here for the free food?" With her glittering champagne glass catching the light like she was accepting a prize for being the cutest person alive, Ava spoke loudly enough for everyone on the balcony to hear. Around her, laughter erupted. The harsh kind, not the courteous kind. The sort that gives you the chills. I wondered whether everyone else at the table knew that I was the one who had to pay for everything, as I stood there with the $200 present that I had wrapped an hour ago. Ava, my pampered, idealized cousin who aspires to be an influencer, gave me a sarcastic smirk that I was all too familiar with. And she wasn't only giggling at me at the time, I was being erased by her. I waited for someone to intervene, anyone. Aunt Karen or her boyfriend, perhaps. However, nobody did. Nobody ever does. Rather, Ava continued to smile as if I hadn't sent her $800 a week for 11 months because she couldn't handle her money after leaving her job to create wellness material. I paid for her rent, electricity, groceries when she lost her PIN, spa days, the facial she had 2 days prior to the party, and emergency veterinary care for the dog she couldn't afford. This whole celebration was financed by me. The balloon arch, the rooftop DJ, the flower arrangement with her name, and the gold foil all evoked her Great Gatsby theme. Cupcakes too. Until she posted a boomerang she would not allow anybody to eat. I was the joke now. Only the cheap cousin. An off-brand pair of pants, a recyclable envelope, and a little gift card. Not worthy of Instagram. Not wealthy. Not important. In the backdrop, it's just a strolling ATM. I was holding a frozen cupcake. My ears are still ringing from her chuckle. Then, as if I were recording the last payment in a transaction, I put it down, composed and exact. I never consented. I didn't cause any trouble. No drink was thrown by me. I didn't bid them farewell. I turned to go. I was not stopped, not even Ava, who once sobbed in 6 consecutive voicemails because she was so stressed up about a $193.47 phone bill that she was unable to breathe. That following night, I made the payment. It has already been a month since then. As if I were sympathetic, she was laughing in my face. I am a fool for not realizing that I have been used. I didn't stay for cake, and the following day, I didn't pick up the phone, or the subsequent one. However, by hour 36, I had received 3 messages and 14 voicemails. Shortly before midnight, I heard a faint, tentative knock on my flat door, as if the person on the other end wasn't sure whether I would even answer it. This time, I had more to say than ever before and nothing left to offer, so they were right to be terrified. It began with a single, short-term payment. 11 months later, I was supporting her way of life as if I owed her money. She always remembered to submit a Venmo request, but she never expressed gratitude. First, there was a phone call. I know this is unpleasant, but I need help paying my rent this month. Ava's voice trembled just enough to appear sincere. I promise to reimburse you next week, but only if I can get a few more brand deals. 47 weeks have passed since then. She never reimbursed me. Spoiler alert, not once. Coffee costs not even $5. But I said yes at the time. Why? Because. Was I simply gullible? Perhaps because we're related. That was my self-talk. In reality, though, it was guilt. It's harmful to feel guilty, particularly after being told your entire life that you're the fortunate one who survived, has a legitimate profession, and ought to provide a hand more. Rent was the only expense at first, followed by food and unexpected dental work. Her dog then needs surgery. She had to start again after losing her phone, which prevented her from creating material and causing her to lose fans. She sobbed. Without fail, I made my payment each week. $800, occasionally more. My life wasn't luxurious. To avoid having to explain why I couldn't split the bill, I avoided going out with friends, ate spaghetti 4 times a week, and drove a beat-up Civic. Ava shared videos of yoga studios with $30 drop-ins and beach photos from weekend getaways with face masks that cost more than my electricity bill. I paid for her comfort, her quiet, and her well-maintained appearance. What's the worst? She pretended it wasn't unusual, as if I was only fulfilling my role. When I gave money, she would add, "You're always so generous. No, thank you. No, I'll reimburse you. That's all." It seemed as though she was complimenting me on being her personal bankroll. However, the really pivotal moment occurred 6 weeks before to the celebration. She contacted me in tears and claimed that her landlord was being irrational and demanding rent again, like a monster, and that she might be evicted. It's only a temporary situation. She gave a whiff. "Please, I'm going to drown." I sent her $2,400 all at once. She shared a picture from a new spa the following day. When you realize the universe provides #abundance mindset, was the caption. I read that again and again while I gazed at it for a whole minute. Now I was the universe. I began keeping note of every transaction that evening. Pay the rent, groceries, cosmetic procedures, Uber trips in an emergency. She paid $89 to a bakery for gluten-free dog birthday cupcakes and $89 to her hairstylist. A dog indeed. It came to slightly over $31,000 at the conclusion of the month. I could have paid off my college bills, purchased a new vehicle, or taken a trip, but instead I had given Ava a whole influencer lifestyle. She continues to call me cheap. Since she had previously used that phrase as a jest, it struck a deeper chord than I had anticipated. She rolled her eyes and exclaimed, "Wow, when I brought beer to a family cookout one time instead of wine. Boring and reasonably priced. You are classic." Once more, I declined her invitation to join her on a birthday trip to Cabo. "Stop being so tight," she mumbled. "I choose to disregard it. She was going through a lot, so I always disregarded it, since it wasn't her intention. Because I was the one who always picked up the pieces, the one who was responsible, and the one who was composed. However, following that spa post, something changed. Something broke. She phoned me the next time to report that her Wi-Fi was turned off. I stopped. I remained silent longer than normal. "Are you there?" Her tone was already defensive as she asked. "I'm present." I don't know why she became silent, but I spoke carefully, "As you are always helpful." At last, she spoke. "You promised to support me no matter what." And there it was. Not appreciation, not modesty, entitlement. My assistance did not seem like compassion to her. It was a right to her, as if I owed her a way of life. At that point, I understood that this was no longer support. This was enslavement. I didn't send the $800 that week. I discovered 3 missed calls when I woke up the next day. Then an SMS message. "Hello, was there a problem with the transfer? I'm getting another SMS from my landlady." I didn't respond. She made another Venmo request for me the next week. Just the amount $800, no message. I turned it down. "Funny how some people disappear the moment you actually need them," she said in a narrative she shared 2 hours later. "Genuine ones endure." I burst out laughing. The birthday invitation followed. I didn't want to go to the rooftop event with a Gatsby theme, but I felt compelled go since she had called and said, "I really need this to go well. I'd like you to be there, I mean it." I thus arrived with clean clothes and a present. With what little dignity I still possessed, I ironed myself. She also made fun of me in front of everyone for only coming for the free meal. They also chuckled. I had no one to defend myself. Nobody inquired. Wait a minute, isn't that the man who essentially covered the entire cost? Now that the gravy train had stopped and she had nowhere else to go, she was pleading, messaging, and phoning. But because this was about more than simply money now, I wasn't responding. This had to do with how much of myself I had given up in order to get acceptance, and how I felt about the transaction when she arrived at my door crying. Maybe, just maybe, I thought, she finally got it. I destroyed the bridge myself when she doubled down instead. It was just before midnight when the knock arrived. The first time, I disregarded it. The second followed. This time, it's quieter, as if the person who had done it had lost the guts to do it. I recognized her. I waited. Please then, all I have to do is speak. Ava. The same voice who once contacted me in the middle of the night to say she didn't want to pay surge pricing because her Uber got lost. The same voice that pleaded with me for rent assistance. The same voice that, while holding a glass of champagne I had paid for, called me cheap in front of 30 others. She was standing there when I answered the door, her party dress zipped up over her hoodie, mascara smudged, shoes in one hand like a dejected prom queen. Even if her makeup was smeared and her eyes were blurry, she was still Ava, the girl who could make herself appear broken enough to be forgiven. I said something I didn't mean, she muttered. I remained silent. I simply moved out of the way. Like a kid awaiting a reprimand, she entered carefully. I was intoxicated, she began. It was a joke. Don't. I didn't think. I interrupted her. Never begin with that. She blinked. You didn't respond after you left. Come on, I thought you were crazy. I didn't intend it that way, you know. No, I said that's precisely how you mean it. I was done waiting for her to come up with the perfect lie, but she opened her mouth again. I'm cheap, you say. In front of others, I said. I don't even know these people. People who laughed at me while stealing my money from gold toothpicks. I didn't ask you to cover all of the costs. Her voice cracked as she snapped. I genuinely laughed. You didn't? I arched an eyebrow. Let me remind you. I unlocked my Venmo, took up my phone, and extended it towards her. Page after page, $1,200, $800 for $100. Because her card was responding strangely, she even spent $36 in sushi. You didn't inquire. You pleaded. You shed tears. You are guilty. And you made me feel ashamed when I stopped. Suddenly protective, she folded her arms. Why do you think this is so important? Your income is more than sufficient. A few thousand? What is that? That was it. Something snapped in my body. My chest feels so hard, I had to inhale before responding. What do you know? Silently, I said. I earn plenty. Yes, I do. And I've been living like a ghost for 11 months. In order for you to appear alive. In order for you to publish lobster rolls, I ate ramen. After paying your rent, I was unable to afford treatment, so I skipped it. To allow you to breathe in your foolish eucalyptus-scented yoga classroom, I choked. Her eyes filled with tears once again. I had no idea. You didn't give a damn. Quiet. Then she retreated. Get moving, she whispered quietly. I'm your family. You promised to always assist. Once more, it was there. The deception. I offered to assist. I gave a nod. I didn't promise to vanish for you. Then abruptly, she turned to face the floor. What the heck? After everything, you're severing my connection forever. All of it. I said it again. What is everything exactly? Do you mean when you laughed in my face and drained me dry? You know, the bit where you acted like I didn't exist unless there was a bill to pay? Her expression stiffened. You're exaggerating. Excellent, I remarked, taking a step forward. Then perhaps I will at last equal your vigor. She was struck by that. She took a step back. Do you believe that you are now superior to me? No, I responded icily. I believe I finally figured out who you are. Her lips opened, but she didn't say anything, so I continued. You attempted to make me smaller when you were in front of a large group of people. The one person who has supported you from the beginning was humiliated by you. And now you're here, feeling guilty and crying, believing that I'll fold once again. She took a deep breath. All I need is a little assistance, just for this month. I know I spoke a single word, and Renee is late. Sharp, tidy. She appeared as though it had never been mentioned to her before. I approached the door and pulled it open. I don't have to take care of you, Ava. No more. Her lip quivered. I don't have anyone else, though. I was taken by you, I said, and you gave me the best laugh of your life. She paused for a moment. Hurt? Furious? Perhaps both. Then, whispering something to herself, she snatched up her handbag and walked out. I secured the door and shut it behind her. I then switched off my phone. This time, for real. There will be no further transfers. No more requests. No more acting like you're someone you're not. That being loved is synonymous with being used. I assumed that cutting her off would make me feel bad. Rather, it was liberating. Her quick return was the one thing that surprised me more than her quiet. At first, the quiet was odd. No dramatic 2 a.m. or Venmo pings, voicemails, a single time attached, and no SMS with emojis of tears. After nearly a year, for the first time. Since my phone was silent, I honestly feared that I would feel bad. I assumed I would stay up at night wondering whether she was all right, if she paid her rent, if she fed her dog, or if she would publish some mysterious tale. I would start to doubt everything because of it. I didn't feel guilty, though. I was relieved. Overwhelming relief, a sharp electric shock. It seemed as though bricks that I was unaware were on my chest had been removed. I tidied my flat. I had money left over after paying my own expenditures. I didn't have to deduct Ava's $800 from my weekly budget since I bought groceries for myself. I even scheduled a therapy session that I had been putting off for 6 months. But I haven't heard anything. Not from her. Not from her mom. Not from anybody in the poisonous, always smiling, and constantly demanding group she surrounded herself with like a moat. Right up until day 8. It started at that point. It seemed subtle at first. Cutting people off isn't a sign of strength. according to a popular Instagram remark. It makes you callous. Then a narrative about her sobbing cut to a scene with a fluffy blanket and mascara smudged. Caption: only when you are helpful do some people adore you. I thought I could become blind from rolling my eyes so much. Then the text arrived. Ava, I'm in pain, but I won't plead. I also believed that we were superior to this. I didn't respond. Another Ava the next day. Let me clarify. Please, this must make sense to me. I'm welcome to visit. Simply speak. No response as of yet. And then the escalation. Of course, that Saturday, I met her mother. In queue at the grocery shop is my aunt. Oh, you're still here. She smiled icily as she said, enough loud for human hearing. Ava said, you have been aloof. I didn't answer. I simply nodded courteously. By Sunday, I had paid for my groceries and departed. Ava's voice had changed entirely. Look, Ava, I didn't want to harm you, even though I realize I made a mistake. I went into a panic. As everyone watched, I made an effort to be humorous. It was a joke. I care about you. You've always done so. Don't hate me, please. After a full minute of staring at the screen, I did something I hadn't done since this whole thing started. Setting my phone aside, I stepped outside. I sat in the park with a book, went on a stroll, and had coffee without having to bear the burden of someone else's anxiety. I wasn't a fixer, no more. However, Ava continued. She repeatedly texted, phoned, and left a message that began calmly before breaking down in tears. Rent was no longer the issue, or the gathering. It has to do with control. She was spiraling because she could feel it slipping. She played one final card the next evening. She was not alone herself when she returned to my door. Her lover, Brandon, Braxton, or whatever name he went by on Pinterest, stood behind her. The same person who watched me leave that rooftop as if I were inconsequential and who chuckled at her joke. His eyes were sad and his hands were in his pockets as he stood on my porch. All we want to do is chat. Ava spoke quietly. I didn't fully open the door. You did it already. In front of 30 people, I stated that on your rooftop. It wasn't my intention. You took what I said seriously. But I also meant mine. I'm finished. At last, Braxton raised his head. She's been spiraling, Guy. She hasn't slept. She's not feeling well. I cocked my head. When she called me cheap in front of you, did she cry this much? Quiet, I continued. The two of you have each other. She may or may not be able to solve it. However, I'm tired of being the antagonist in a tale where I was the only one who suffered in order to save the life of another. I shut the door after that. Not slammed, not shouted, simply shut it. Because borders sound like that. I took the present I gave to her party later that evening. I left that one on the table. She tossed away the one she never even opened. Tossing a receipt to a fraud I never consented to felt like that. And what do you know? I felt no remorse. I felt sanitized. The last update. I put the tale up on the internet, just for a moment, not out of pity. However, I wasn't prepared for the world's response. I did something I never would have imagined doing a week after I finally said goodbye to Ava. Naturally, I submitted the entire thing anonymously on Reddit using a fictitious username rather than using my real identity. For 11 months, I gave my cousin $800 every week. At her birthday celebration, she referred to me as cheap. Without a word, I walked away. Don't use hashtags, no changes, just the facts. Within hours, the post went viral. Upvotes from tens of thousands. There were thousands of comments. Every statement is being dissected by others as if I were a character in a twisted drama. It caught me off guard. I had no idea why I had done it. Perhaps I simply had to say it aloud to find out whether she was indeed insane or if I was. Reddit, too. Reddit didn't mince words. There were some nasty remarks among the top ones. She isn't related to you. For months, she has been emotionally draining you. Cutting her off was the correct thing to do. I would have splattered her face with the cupcake. The ability to wait. You earned $800 a week, Saint Level. For half of such insult, I would cut off my own brother. Then the questions appeared. The actual ones. The ones that forced me to ponder instead of scroll. Why did you spend so much time assisting her? For you, what was in it? Did you fall for her or something? This generosity sounds more than just that of a relative. This is a serious question. In the worst one, are you certain you weren't attempting to purchase her love? What first led you to believe that you were deserving of such treatment? They were correct, so that one struck a different chord. I wasn't only being giving. Growing up alone, I was attempting to achieve something that I never had. The golden girl, the star, had always been Ava, even as children. I was the quiet, rational, uninteresting cousin who always had extra pencils. I felt needed when I helped her, and invisible as you get older. Love may feel like need, however, it wasn't. Dependency was the issue. Exploitation, adorned with glitter. I was unable to view it once I saw it. I thus made a follow-up post. I have perused your remarks. Excellent, not good, deranged. Here's the reality. I wanted to think that someone could love me and still need me that much, so I assisted her. But quiet isn't required by love. You are not publicly humiliated by love. Your generosity is not currency to love. It is due. I wasn't in love with her then. All I wanted was to be important. And I am important to myself now. For the first time, in a single day, that remark received 40 upvotes. It began to be quoted, sending me a message with their personal narratives. In the break room, this brought me to tears. I recently stopped my sister's Venmo auto deposit. I'm grateful, man. I left my mom's place with your support. Naturally, not everyone was on board. You're still resentful. From someone who has never been told no, this exudes main character enthusiasm. Perhaps. However, if being the protagonist in my own life makes me resentful, then so be it. I spent too much time being an extra in other people's drama. I no longer send money because I feel bad about it. I don't respond to sob tales in the middle of the night. My phone doesn't vibrate like a slot machine all the time. I go for walks if someone wants a small item. I prepare meals for just one person. I go to sleep. Ava texted once more the other day. Ava, I miss our previous relationship before all of this. For some reason, this is the first time in my life that I have ever felt at peace, so I didn't reply. Should I pardon her? I'm not sure. I believe I do on certain days. On certain days, I can still picture her expression when she called me cheap. After nearly a year of holding her up like scaffolding, I also understand that she did more than simply steal my money. She attempted to degrade me, and I will never lend anyone anything else again after that. I'm writing this right now. Seeing strangers read my life like if it were a book. Some people are happy. Some people wince. Some people don't trust me. Others recognize themselves in it. And perhaps that's why I initially posted it. In case someone else is being exploited in silence, grinning while drowning, and they're wondering whether they're the crazy one for finally refusing. This could make it easier for them to breathe. Or perhaps not. Here's what I wonder, although I don't claim to have the answers. If you are only loved by someone when you are helpful, have they ever shown you any love? Story 3, during the family meal, my uncle said, Derek is willing to pay. He's wealthy and lonely. It came to $12.40. I gave a nod, got to go to the loo, and headed directly to the airport by car. Obtained the Tower of Lobsters. Derek is making the payment. I was my cousin Rachel's butler, and she was snapping her fingers at the waiter like she was royalty. I grinned. Naturally, I grinned. I do that. Grin. Pay. Take it all in. There were 12 of us at the table. If you can call it that, my family. Dad was drinking his Bordeaux for the second time already. The truffle risotto was a hit with Rachel's boyfriend. The decor was being streamed live by my sister. Mom had returned to me with a designer and her little puppy. I was the idiot, the host, and the bank. Silently, the waiter laid the bill in front of me. Leather folder. A subtle gesture. I hadn't inquired at all. All of them simply knew. Uncle Steve then dropped it while leaning back in his chair. Derek is willing to pay. He's wealthy and lonely. The entire table became cold. Rachel choked back a chuckle. My mother looked at me as if she wasn't sure if she should stand up for me. My father arched an eyebrow but remained silent. Quiet, dense, sharp, embarrassing. I could hear him clearly, but I murmured, "Excuse me." He gave a shrug. My point is, youngster, what else will you do with your money? No children, no wife? Treating those who truly created families is something you may as well do. My chest began to slowly burn. I had a look around. Not a single word was spoken. Not Rachel, who overdrafts her account each month and phones me. Not my mother, who continues to refer to me as her son since I work too much to be a parent. Not my father, who hasn't given me a hug since I was 12. I took a peek at the bill. $12.40. It was, of course. I grinned. That's reasonable. I pushed my chair back and stated that. Where are you heading? Mom inquired in confusion. Restroom. Be right back, I said. No, I wasn't. I passed the maitress, the valet, and the life I had been duped into believing I had to keep up. Entered my vehicle. No calls, no music, just a mental voice, as if it were a drum. Rich and lonely. I passed my condo's exit as I drove. Straight to the airport, past the downtown skyline. No return, no strategy. More loud than everything they had ever uttered, there was only one truth. They weren't related to me. My audience was them. The performance came to an end. Then I had a memory. A pattern, not a single instance. A disease I had let to spread for years. The day I earned my first $1 million was the beginning of it. Not everything was always paid for by me. Not so long ago, I was invisible to my own family at that period. Not despised, not adored, simply unimportant. The type of individual you overlook when sending group SMS. The kind that learns about family holidays after they have already taken place. From a person's Instagram account. Before the money, that was who I was. It was 3 years ago. I was simply another backdrop face. Keep quiet, concentrated, a little uncomfortable at family gatherings. No wife, no children, a new business, and too much coffee. One Thanksgiving, the first recall. It took me 2 hours to get there by car, brought pie, wine, everything. When I walked in, no one greeted me. No one. Please reserve a spot for me. While everyone else laughed at the large table and pretended I wasn't there, I ate while standing up in the kitchen. Rachel joked that I always appear exhausted, similar to a ghost that coats. My uncle chuckled. My father laughed. Oh, honey, she's just playing. Even Mom remarked. I departed early that evening. No one took attention. The app then made $38 million. Tidy, quick, brutal. All of a sudden, things shifted. I didn't need to make the announcement. Still, they learned. Because every phone seems to ring when money is involved, Mom was the first to call. Derek. I'm so proud of you, baby. We were always aware of your potential. You were the topic of our conversation last night. That was untrue. It has been 7 months since we last spoke. Then Rachel arrived. Hello, cousin. Listen, I have a small thought. Jewels. A helmet. Quite specialized. I only require seed money. Not very much. Possibly 5,000. I handed her 10. The next day, she shared a story. I'm very fortunate to have a family that supports me. Not a tag? Thank you, but no. 2 days later, I got a call from my dad, claimed that the mortgage was past due. Only a rough patch. He spoke to another man as if we were suddenly on an equal footing. I had more money now than he had ever had in his life. I sent the money to him. The first month was that one. Then they stopped acting like that. Every week, Rachel called. Do it quickly. My vehicle broke down. The rent is past due. I have to get over the fact that that guy abandoned me. Trip for the girls. Uncle Steve needed assistance with his taxes. My mother sobbed on the phone because she was unable to pay to travel to Florida to see her sister. While she was still pretending to cry inside of me, I heard her making the reservation. I did my part because I secretly believed that they would fall in love with me if I continued to give. They clapped when I picked up the tab at the chateau for the first time. I'm serious. They gave a clap. They held up their glasses as if I had rescued them from a burning structure. To Derek, our very own tech whiz. Uncle Steve gave my mother a toast. Dad? She looked at me as if I had cured cancer. I should have seen it then, but I didn't. Because part of me, the desperate, wounded part, wanted it to be real. I wanted to believe that their warmth was finally directed at me, not at the money I now carry like a cursed crown. But it didn't stop at dinners. Oh no. Suddenly, I was hosting birthdays, anniversaries, surprise engagements, all funded by me. Rachel threw a tantrum when I didn't fly her to Napa for her birthday. You're rich. Derek, what's a few $100 to you? A few hundred? She burned through $12,000 in one weekend and didn't say thank you once. Last Christmas, the first showed up with gifts for everyone. Designer bags, watches, a PlayStation for Rachel's boyfriend, the same guy who never even remembers my name. You know what I got in return? A world's best uncle mug and a pair of socks. I'm not even an uncle. That night, while they all drank and danced, I sat by the fire alone, wondering how I became this. A man who bought his way into family photos. A man who paid for love in installments. A man who smiled through it all, just to feel like he belonged. But last night, when Uncle Steve leaned back and said, "Derek is willing to pay. He's wealthy and lonely," and everyone laughed. That wasn't just a sentence, that was a verdict. And I finally saw it crystal clear. They never saw me, only what I gave, and the truth. They liked me better, invisible. As long as the card cleared, I came back for a reason, not because I missed them, not because I needed closure, but because they needed to see it. See the man they hollowed out? See the bank account they drained, standing on 2 feet and finally saying enough. They booked brunch at the chateau again. Of course they did. Old habits die rich. They thought I was still in Tokyo. They didn't know I'd been watching Rachel posted a boomerang of champagne. Uncle Steve shared a smug family time photo. My mother tagged me in a picture where I didn't exist. Just an empty chair with my name card. That was the moment I got in my car when I entered the room. Time stopped. The clink of glasses. The chatter. The fake smiles all frozen. Mom stood up first. Voice syrupy. "Derek, you're back. We've been so worried. Worried I'd cut them off." Maybe not worried about me. I stared at her for 3 full seconds before replying. "Did you miss me? Or just my visa?" Gasps. My dad cleared his throat. "Son, this isn't the time, honestly," I remarked, taking a step forward. "It's the perfect time. Because for once, you're all sitting. And for once, I have your whole attention." I went into my coat and placed a big envelope on the table. Rachel grabbed it. "What is this?" "Some legal receipts," I said. "For years. Worth. Every supper, every flight, every hotel gift, private driver, spy treatment, cash transfer, rent payment, and emergency. Meticulously arranged. Underlined. Tapped." Uncle Steve gave a snort. "You have been monitoring us," I said, recording the heist. Not tracking. I gestured directly at Rachel. "Weekend in Napa. It would be cool," you remarked. "Reasonably priced. Low-key. $12,437 was the total cost." After her jaw tightened, "You abandoned me for 3 weeks. Thank you," I said. "No, you made a post. Thank you." "I never heard you say that." I looked at my dad. "You required assistance with the mortgage." I made the payment. Then again and again. You claimed to be embarrassed, yet that didn't stop you from asking. He got to his feet. "You are making a fool of yourself. I'm exposing you to Mom, Dad." On the phone, you sobbed. Said you couldn't afford to go see Aunt Linda. Why did you sneeze when I was holding the money? The moron, not me, was tagged in the shoddy pictures you shared from a 5-star hotel. The loudness in my chest increased as I turned to face the entire table. When you requested money, you referred to me as family. When I needed help, you disregarded me. Only when you wanted the debt paid did you invite me. For once, they were frozen. No phony grins, no courteous falsehoods. Just mouths fell and cheeks flushed. Rachel was the first to speak. "What the heck? You're wealthy. You behave as though this was a charity. Here, you wanted to feel important. No, what I wanted was love. I paid even though I knew I couldn't purchase that from you." I hoped I was mistaken. I inhaled. I looked them all in the eyes. I was not mistaken. Uncle Steve threw down his glass. "You are behaving like a kid. I had a harsh, bitter laugh once." "No, I am behaving as though I had just woken up. I see you for who you are now that I'm conscious. Anyone up for a game?" Users. A well-dressed room full with debts. In the corner, I turned to face the waiter. The poor fellow. He seems to want to vanish. "Divide the bill equally. There are 12 methods." He blinked. "Please pardon me. I heard you." They are able to pay their fair share. For once in their life, my mom let out a gasp. "We're paying for it. Please." After a long period of time, I leaned a little. I'm speaking more quietly now. Let's call it interest. Rachel got to her feet. She raised her voice. This is something you'll regret. When you quit paying Derek, you'll be by yourself. No one remains. I am aware. Quiet. I then said the silent portion aloud. And I can tell who's real that way. I didn't leave all at once. It would have been dramatic. I walked with dignity, slowly and quietly. They would never comprehend. I left the debt and the phony grins behind. Also, for the first time in a long time, I walked away without paying. It was calm for the first 3 days. No texts, no calls. Not a passive-aggressive one either. I hope all is well with you. Share on social media. I hadn't experienced that level of quiet in years. The sort of nothingness that is simultaneously relieving, similar to inhaling air free of toxins. It was the best sleep I'd had in months. At 2 a.m, no vibrating phone. Don't make up crises. No impromptu Venmo request with a romantic attachment. Now that I had no one to perform for, I could finally reflect on who I had been and who I may become. On the 4th day, however, the quiet broke. There was no call. There was no knock. It was a courier-delivered legal envelope. Expensive, bold ink printed my name. The type of mail that, when found inside a lawsuit brought by my own family, exudes entitlement and malice. Alleged financial and emotional desertion. The requested sum is $2.3 million. Filed jointly by Uncle Steve, my parents, and Rachel. Before I thought it was real, I had to read it 3 times. They said that monetary damages, disturbance of lifestyle, and psychological suffering had resulted from my abrupt and careless withdrawal of assistance. Physical injury. That is, they were no longer able to purchase Botox and exotic wine. It was so irrational that I laughed, not because it was amusing. It was nearly brilliant. They were more than just avaricious. They had a plan. They hauled me that night if they couldn't get me to guilt myself back in. I made myself a drink and took a seat on my apartment's balcony. No view of the skyline, only wind and trees. And I made 2 promises to myself. First of all, they would never quit. 2, I wasn't either. The next twist followed. I received a message 2 days after the lawsuit. Nor from the press, nor from a lawyer. From Emily? Yes. Emily was the one who abandoned me 3 weeks before to our wedding. Not a word, no farewell, nothing but quiet, as well as a ghostly smelling wardrobe. Derek, I understand that you probably don't want to hear from me, but I must speak with you directly since I witnessed what your family is doing. I didn't answer. Not that evening. Not the following one. However, I only typed 1 word on the 3rd day. She was wearing a green coat, the same color she had on the previous time I saw her, when we met at a Silver Lake coffee shop. However, it now had a new appearance, more powerful, similar to armor. She didn't cry or grin. I'm to blame, she said. Everything. I blinked. What are you saying? She let out a sigh. I didn't vanish out of malice when I departed. Your mother instructed me to go, so I did. Quiet. I visited her. The pressure frightened me. You have been motivated by being with someone. I started to question everything, she said. I froze when I gazed at her. I wasn't good enough for you, she said. That I had distracted you. That I would leave you alone and allow you to develop if I truly loved you. And you thought she was real? I said. She took a swallow. I was 25. I was alone. She was convincing too. She said that if I simply left, she would keep it quiet. All of a sudden, everything made sense. The disappearing act, the intentional coldness. My mother never brought her up again. There was no breakup. It was erased. I sold the app. You informed your mother. Slowly, I said. She gave a nod. I was upset. I assumed you had moved on. She started the feeding frenzy because I wanted to let her know I was there. Indeed. I examined her heart. Why inform me now, since I was mistaken? I also detest what they did to you. Someone should be on your side. We remained up that night reading over previous messages. She assisted me in creating a timeline. Family messages, manipulation patterns, voice memos, pictures. I then sent them. For 2 individuals, all of them. My pal Owen is my lawyer, journalist who conducts investigations. The piece became up 5 days later. The cost of giving. A family's lawsuit against their own kid for severing their luxury stipend. Screenshots of deceptive texts were supplied. Evidence of payments. Sound recording of my mother blaming Emily. A detailed account of the amount each family member was given. Rachel's statement on camera that he won't ever cut us off. He requires us. Within 72 hours, it detonated. Rachel. Sponsorships ceased to exist. Steve, her uncle, was placed on leave while an ethical assessment was conducted. My dad's membership in the golf club was canceled. After my mother deleted all of her accounts, the lawsuit was abandoned. Nothing to say. It wasn't over, though. My mother sent me one final letter, written by hand. 2 pages. Don't apologize. Simply assign responsibility. We were embarrassed by you. You lack gratitude. We took care of everything for you. I've read it once. I then set it on fire. Emily. This time, she stayed. She made no attempt to correct me, didn't make any requests. She simply remained, sat silently with me, assisted me in rebuilding. Not love. Not quite yet. However, presence is more uncommon than love. I reside in a tiny place now. No more penthouses, no longer personal chef, no more pleading for favors over the phone, only books, music. Keep quiet. I check my own mail, I make my own coffee, decide who I will allow in. And sometimes someone inquires, ever miss them? Since I never had them, I grin. All I had were their expectations. I have something better now. Peace and boundaries that cannot be purchased. Nothing changed in the world. Yes, I did. And it was the decisive factor. It's odd how full stillness can be. The initial months following the conclusion of everything. It seemed as if the music had abruptly stopped in the room where I was standing. No commotion, no cheers. Simply take a breath. Only light. I became aware of things once more. At 6:42 a.m., the way the curtain lets in morning light. On the balcony, the sound of birds. The soft murmur of a universe that doesn't have any expectations of you. In my life, for the first time, I wasn't playing, nor for validation, nor for approval. Not out of love. I was required to pay for it in installments. I was simply being myself. And that seemed like a revolution in and of itself. I became a part of the communal garden. I missed touching something tangible. Not because I'd become suddenly interested in kale. Planting seeds and dirt alongside people who don't give a damn about your background, income, or whether your last name is associated with a controversy has a certain power. Only hands in the dirt. Straightforward dialogue. Growth not expressed in monetary terms. Marta, a 73-year-old lady, manages the compost pile like a military unit. "You seem like a man who finally stopped running," she replied, glancing at me. And since I had, I almost started crying. And I did it, after 38 years. I resumed journaling, but this time it was in a battered leather notebook rather than on a laptop. On certain days, I only write a single sentence, 5 pages on certain days. However, writing things down without having to explain them is helpful. Nobody reads it. It is not edited by anyone. And in a time when I would recount every action for the approval of others, it feels like a present. I also quit lying, not only to other people, to me. I stopped acting as though I didn't mind painful things. Give up phoning, betrayal, poor communication. Don't say that exploitation is a natural part of family life. I now give names to things that seem off. I don't change the cue when someone crosses it. I go with no regrets and no justifications. For no is a phrase. I have the right to express it too. These days, I visit a bookshop. Ancient wooden flooring. It smells like paper, dust, and tranquility. Jules, the proprietor, never inquires about my work. He simply responds once again and provides a complimentary cup of coffee. We discuss philosophy occasionally. Occasionally, it's about films. We once spent for an hour talking about the distinction between loneliness and isolation, with loneliness being perceived as invisible. Being alone means making your own decisions. I still feel invisible even though I used to be surrounded by others, so it has lingered with me. I feel whole now as I read a book by myself. This year, I've made 3 new pals. None of them inquired about my vehicle. They didn't follow me for influence. Not a one of them uses social media. On Sundays, we get together, discuss life and music, sit quietly at times. The connection isn't ostentatious or noisy. It's not a loyalty that can be purchased. It's basic, yet genuine. And until I got it, I had no idea what I was without. Emily. She currently resides a few blocks away. We don't give it a name, no labels, there is no pressure. She delivers tea on certain evenings. On certain evenings, I bring a book. We talk less than we laugh. What we had will not be rebuilt. We're creating a better structure, something truthful. No fear, no performance, simply being there, and the previous version of me. It's calmer now, yet he's still here someplace. He doesn't cry out for acceptance. He doesn't plead for attention. He's sleeping, restoring. I also give him a nod whenever I go by a mirror. To appreciate him, not to delete him. He lived. What? I was unaware that I had to flee. I occasionally receive communications from former acquaintances who are orbiters rather than family. Those who benefited from my kindness and referred to it as friendship. For example, I miss you, man. I hope all is well with you. Let's get together sometime. I don't respond. I don't need to fill every void anymore, not out of animosity. I ran across a young man at the community garden last week. He was overdressed for dirt and appeared exhausted. As someone might, he continued to check his phone. The Yankees chain. I approached him and gave him a trowel. Start with Basil, he said. It expands quickly. You will believe that you are doing things correctly. He blinked, nodded, didn't inquire for my name. Didn't give a damn. Excellent. In actuality, not much has changed in the globe. People continue to take. Families continue to control. Noise, hunger, and the urge to purchase your way into love are all still present. However, I've evolved. I no longer bargain with guilt. For connection, I don't try out. I don't pretend to be sad in order to console other people. I simply exist. And it's still difficult on some days. However, it's usually free. Do you now regret leaving that supper, if I may ask? My response is straightforward. No. I'm sorry I waited so long.